Welcome back to the channel, guys. So you want to play Artmage, but you don't know what the cards do, or you don't know what direction to take the deck in. Well, this video is here to help you with that. So I'm going to teach you all the things you need to know about the Artmage deck, and by the end of this video, you should be able to know everything that the deck does and have an idea of how to play the deck. So, the first thing I'd like to start with is basically just telling you what some key cards of the deck do. So the first one and the most important card in the deck is the field spell. So this is your most important card because it adds all Artmage monsters. So once per turn, you can declare an Artmage monster's name and then discard a spell or trap from your hand, and then you can search for that monster. You can't call a single name more than once. So currently there are 4 names in the main deck, so that means you can use this card up to 4 times per turn. And it does have a lock on it. It's not that big of a deal. It locks you into Artmage monsters from the main deck only and Medios Superior. So you can summon anything you want from your extra deck basically. So that's for the field spell, the most important card in the deck. And then arguably the second most important card in the deck, Medios Superior. So Medios is a starter basically for every single lore deck that's a part of this lore. So he summons a Power Patron monster from the deck unsummon. So the relevant card for this deck in particular would be the Artmage Power Patron. So when this is summoned to the field, it doesn't have any effects immediately. It does lock you into fusions while it's on the field, but it also has a quick effect ability to fusion summon using itself and other cards you control and in your hand as material. So the deck has 2 main fusions that this goes into. I will show them to you later on. So that's an important card as well. The other card, Artmage Grappler. This card is your pseudo starter. So once you have an Artmage card on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand and then set 1 Artmage spell from your deck. So key things to note about this card, the summon and the set are both 1 effect. So it's not summon and then activate, it's summon and then immediately set. So your opponent doesn't get to respond to you setting the card until after you set it. And it also has another effect where it can destroy a spell or trap on the field. If you control 3 or more monsters with different types, that becomes a quick effect. So you can use it at normal speed, but once you have 3 or more type, you can use it as a quick effect. And I realize a lot of people don't know that in particular, that you can still use the effect when you don't have 3 or more monsters on the field. So that's something that you need to remember. Litera. So this card is very important in terms of your resource management, because what she does is, when she's summoned to the field, you can add an Artmage card from your graveyard to your hand. So she has the same effect as him, where if you control an Artmage card, you can special summon her from the hand, and then her special effect is that she adds the card from the graveyard. So she specials and then adds the card from the grave. So the trick about this is, as you can tell, probably by listening to what I'm saying, if you were to use the field spell to summon out all of your Artmage monsters, that would be you sending basically 4 cards from your deck, from your hand to the graveyard. So she helps to mitigate that by giving you back an Artmage card from your graveyard, Artmage spell or trap from your graveyard, so that then you can use on the field spell again. So instead of having to use another card from your hand. She also has another effect where she can special summon an Artmage monster from the graveyard or hand and then return herself to the hand. So that is relevant for later, I will let you know. Other Artmage card, Artmage Finmel. So this one, she can special summon herself from the hand once you control an Artmage card and immediately draw a card. So that's 1 effect, just like the other 2. And then her on-field effect is if you control 3 or more different types, then she's basically Forbidden Droplet. So she negates the monsters and halves their attacks. But key thing to note about her, the negate is permanent. So you will negate the monster and permanently negate them, and then you will half their attack until the end of the turn. So their attack will return to normal at the end of the turn, but they'll stay negated. So these are your main deck monsters. So yeah, those are your main deck monsters. I'll show you the extra deck ones now. So one of the fusion monsters that you'll be making in this deck is Artmage Deactorus. So what this card does is it can negate a card on the field that activates on the field. That's a very important distinction. So even if it leaves the field, once it activated there, this can negate it, assuming you get to chain to it. So it can negate that card and destroy it once you control 3 or more types. And if it's destroyed, you can also summon a Medios Superior from hand, deck, or banishment. So that's an important way to recycle your Mediuses. It also has another effect that it can change the attack position, it can change the battle position of a monster on the field. That doesn't sound very important, but it's going to come up very shortly. So the last fusion card that we have currently in Archetype, well technically it's not in Archetype, but it is Nerva, Power Patron of Creation. So the very first thing about this card is that you don't have to fusion summon it the regular way. It takes 3 Artmage monsters to make, but you can also summon it by just treating 3 face-up monsters you control with different types. And it will summon itself in defense position, which is funny because this can then turn into attack position. So you see that it's important. So this card also has another effect where it can't be destroyed while there is a field spell in the field zone. So even if it's not yours, even if your opponent has a field spell, it can't be destroyed by card effects. And the most important effect on the card is that when an Artmage monster activates its effect, you can chain this card, and then that effect becomes destroy all cards your opponent controls. So if you're used to Draco Tail, it's like Draco Tail Gulamel, where if you activate a Draco Tail card, your opponent gets a chance to respond, and then if they don't have a response, then you chain Gulamel. It's the same thing here. If you activate your Artmage in monster's effect, and then they don't have any response, then you go ahead and chain this, and then that changes the effect. So these are all the monsters and the most important spell in the deck. So all the other spell and traps are basically just support cards. So Artmage Varnish Alteration, that's this card. What this card does, it places the field spell if you don't control one already. And if you do, you can add any Artmage card from your deck to your hand. So it's very good as both a starter and an extender, because if you don't have the field spell, then you'll activate this and it will get it for you. And if you already have the field spell, it's still a good card, because then you can just search for any card in the deck. Key things to note about this card is that even though it places the field spell, it can still be ashed, because the effect to place the field spell or add the card is all one effect. So if your opponent has ash, they can ash this. It doesn't matter which one you're doing. But what I realize is most people, because they don't read the cards, I just tell them that I'm placing the field spell, and then in their brain it's like, oh, he's placing a card, I can't ash it. So that's some game I'm putting you on to right there. So when you activate this card, if you don't have the field spell, just say I'm activating this card to place the field spell, and yeah, they probably won't read it, so they'll think that they can't ash it. Another important card, Artmage Vandalism Assault. So this card is very simple. It just adds Medius. That's the most important part of the card. It also protects your field spell from destruction, so if it would be destroyed, then you can send it to the graveyard instead of the field spell being destroyed. And if you were going to fusion someone, you have to activate this, by the way, the effect I'm going to tell you now. If you want to fusion someone, you can use this effect to treat a monster on the field as an Artmage monster for this turn. So that's these. There are 2 more important cards that I'm going to tell you about now. Artmage Pact Awakening. So if you guys know Branded Lost, this is basically this, but better. So once you activate this, the on-field effect that is, you can special summon an Artmage monster or a Medius Superior from your deck, and then for the rest of the turn, your fusion card, your effects that fusion summon, your opponent cannot negate the activations of them, and they can't respond when a monster is fusion summoned. So a key thing with this card, if you use the on-field effect, because it does have another effect which I'll tell you in a second, if you activate this on your opponent's turn and summon out, say, Medius, and then you use Medius effect to grab the Power Patron, and then you use the Power Patron to fuse into this card, then your opponent won't get to respond to this card. So they'll just have to accept that their field is going to be destroyed. So because they can't respond on the summon, anything that activates on the summon in that window, they can't respond to it. So what's going to happen is this card is going to go to the graveyard, and then its effect in the graveyard is going to trigger it to add an Artmage card, different from the ones in your graveyard. And then this will trigger behind it, destroying everything on their field. Okay, so this also has another effect, as I said. It has an effect in the grave. The effect in the grave is that you can banish it, and then target one Artmage monster you control. You return that monster to your hand, and then you destroy a card your opponent controls. So it's very good layered interruption. Most of the time you won't be setting this on the field. You'll just pitch it to the graveyard and let it stay there so that you can use the effect. Then the other important card, you play it as a one-off, Artmage Masterwork Succession. So this is a fusion spell. Basically during the main phase you can fusion summon, and then if you control a field spell, the monster that's fusion summon gains 500 attack. But the most important effect on this card is that you can banish it from your graveyard to return 3 Artmage monsters to your deck. So basically you can return it, you can banish it, sorry, and then you can return your Field Metal, Grafflair, and Littera to your deck. So very important stuff. So these are the key cards. There are 2 other Artmage cards. They're not really good, so I won't touch on them too much. The spell is okay, but the trap is garbage, so we don't play those. You can play the spell though if you really, really want to, but they're not really worth playing in my opinion. Okay, so now that you know what the cards do, let me just show you what a typical end board for this deck looks like. So I'm not going to show you the combo right now, I'm just going to show you the end board and tell you what's in it. So this is assuming you go first, by the way. Then this is in your graveyard. This should be on the field. And this should be in the grave. So this is your typical end board, assuming you get to play uninterrupted. And this end board, as you can see, is very monster heavy. So there's not a lot of back row. Your non-engine is probably what's going to be filling up this back row. But let me just give you a rundown of what this field is offering you. So you can destroy a spell or trap. You can droplets their entire forbidden droplet their entire field, and you can also get an Omni-Negate with the Arcturus for things that activate on the field. And then this card, it can either return a monster that gets destroyed, or you can use it to go into other fusions. So let me show you. So for example, say your opponent starts with something that destroys Medius. Well, it's not Medius right now technically, but it's Medius. Say your opponent destroys the Arcturus, he goes to the graveyard. That's fine, because you can use her effect to summon him right back, and then she goes to your hand. So that's one way that you can use her, and you can do that for any of your Artmage monsters. The other way is that you can use her to make Nerva. So in that case then, you would go ahead, ideally after you've used these guys' effects on the field, you would go ahead and then say Littera, return to hand, summon him, and then you can either choose to immediately activate on the new chain, or you can wait until your opponent does something, but you go ahead and say effect, and then once they're finished responding or they choose not to respond, you fuse away your 3 cards, and you go straight into your Nerva. And then importantly, what happens here is you activate your Artmage Power Patron in the graveyard, and this is very important, so you have to do this part, or else it doesn't make sense what you just did. So if they don't respond to this, then you can chain this to nuke their entire board. Alternatively, if you had this set, you would activate it, summon out your cards until you get to this point, and then you would activate this, and they couldn't respond to this because of the trap card, and then you would chain this. So basically you get a bunch of interruptions off of this deck. So let me just show you how much you get in all. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4 interruptions off of this field. And that is without you including any back row that you probably have. So 4 interruptions, that's from the field only. So you have a 5th interruption in your graveyard from the trap. But it's important to remember that if you want the graveyard effect of the trap, you cannot use the on-field effect because you can't use both of them in the same turn. So you'll go ahead and say effect, banish this, and then you will target any one of these that you want to return to your hand for whatever reason, and then return it to your hand, and then you get to non-target destroy a card your opponent controls. You can also use this to outplay your opponent. So for example, if I activate Finmel to try and negate their board, and they chain something to try and negate Finmel, you can just go ahead and say effect of the trap, banish the trap, target her, and then you're going to bounce her to dodge all the targeting effects, and she's still going to negate. So that's some more game for you guys. So that's the field, and that's what the deck offers. So as you can see, it's not the craziest ceiling, but at the same time, it is very good. 5 interruptions, and you hardly play into Foalus at all because you're summoning one guy from the extra deck, and you might give them 2 if you use Medius in your turn to summon from the deck. But there are lines around that too. So if you just want to give them only 1 draw, there are lines for that. You can even give them no draws if you really want to, and still end on this board. So I'll show you all of that later on.